Welcome back to Your Real Estate Voice with Barb Schlinker, the weekly radio show that informs and educates you on how to buy or sell real estate with Barb Schlinker, the host and the owner of Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty. Now, Barb, I think a majority of people selling their home expect that the buyers will purchase it as is and without any repairs. But we've talked before, and the reality is most buyers do an inspection, and sometimes it goes well. Other times it can be very frustrating for the home seller. You've had some experiences. Should home sellers attend the buyer's inspection?
I tell them to, and I think even though it's uncustomary for some real estate agents that the seller is home during the inspection. And I think the reason is they want to be able to talk about the house and talk openly about its flaws and all that while they're in the home. However, in the state of Colorado, inspectors don't have to have, there is no licensing. There's absolutely no government oversight on that trade. In fact, there's very little government oversight in what real estate agents do. There's no job description. There's no who does what. There's only follow these rules and fill out these forms. That's about it. It's not very in-depth. So, it gets very frustrating when you're working with somebody who's, quote, representing the buyer. And a lot of times these agents will tell me, well, can't you just give out the combo and let my inspector in for 3 hours going over all the systems? And I'm like, no, he's not licensed. It invalidates my insurance for somebody to not be there besides him. And, how do I know he doesn't break something? I've had inspectors break things a lot, let me tell you. And of course, it wasn't their fault when you draw it to their attention on a very much a regular basis. So um, I think it's a very good idea to keep an eye on what they're doing. And I've actually had both agents and inspectors tell the sellers to leave their own home during the inspection. So I have to kind of let my clients know in advance, don't be surprised at this behavior because there is no job description for real estate. There is no licensing for inspectors. So you never know what you're going to get. And they're usually pretty shocked when I say, so how would you feel if somebody came over and said, okay, you can leave your own home now? Most of them are like, no way. How would you feel, Richard, if somebody said that to you?
Absolutely zero chance of that happening. And I don't care if I've got children in the house or there's nobody in the house. You don't get free reign over my house.
No, and that's what they want. And because there's no description, because there's no standardization in the industry, if agents have done inspections before where it happened to be that the seller wasn't home, they think that's how the world is supposed to work. And so they automatically assume that's how it's supposed to go. Why is your seller here? I actually have one agent have an absolute hissy fit meltdown and tell me on the phone she's going to tell her buyers to terminate because we were representing the seller at that inspection. And I'm like, okay, well, the reason we're doing that is that the seller, he was out of state at the time, knows more about the home and its systems than anybody, especially since he built the house. So
Wow.
if you have questions, we could share it with your inspector. And she went outside, arms are in the air, flopping on the floor, and her buyer just kind of rolled his eyes at her like, you're an idiot, and came back in and apologized to us. But that's the kind of behavior I run across all the time. And it's just simply ignorance, I think, about how things actually work. One thing on the condition of homes, and I'm just going to make this kind of as a public service announcement, Richard, because this time of year is when I start having panic attacks because there's usually very little warning when the weather changes. So if you're sitting on an empty house right now, it's going to get cold. It's already starting to get cold going into the end of October. We never know when the temperatures are going to drop low enough where you could compromise your plumbing if you don't turn your heat on. So make sure if you have a vacant home that you go and turn the heat on. You can set it really, really low, like 55 or 60 degrees. That's enough to protect the plumbing in case you have a deep freeze, because it could happen. I've had it happen to people before, and I think it's a very expensive thing if you have plumbing break, because it's drywall and it makes a big mess. Have you ever heard of that happening, Richard?
No, I haven't. Well, actually, we spoke about it one time, but other than that, I hadn't. But that's why listening to you every weekend is so important. You cover so many things, and it's always the very latest information.
Yeah, and that kind of thing, it's just, I have a few homes that are presented to the market empty, and I start thinking about it, going, oh, it's going to get cold. Oh my God, is the heat on? We got to go check, because I'm terrified of something going wrong with the plumbing. And here's the thing. Most buyers, when they do their inspection, they're going to do at least one. Sometimes they come back for round two. They're basically going to fully inspect the home. Their agents are encouraging them to test for radon. They're encouraging them to do a sewer scope. They're bringing in a quote unlicensed inspector to judge your home, tell you whether or not the roof is in good condition. They do all kinds of things to ask for stuff. And that's the way some agents kind of justify their job. Hey, look, I got you this or I got you that. And this is where the fights come in. But I've had a lot of problems happen during inspections, like asking my seller to leave, walk in the house without even knocking, track snow in the home, open the door, let the inspector in and leave. One time I had a seller that was both working and they had a teenage daughter at home, and I told them, I told the agent, you need to be there with your inspector. Oh, don't worry. Because I told her there's going to be a teenage daughter home alone. Don't worry, we'll be there for the kiddo. Did she go? No. She skipped out on, she actually went and opened the lockbox and left and went to a closing. And when I confronted her with it, she goes, oh, well, I forgot. I had a closing. She didn't think there was any problem. But fortunately, I just suspected her. I knew there was my spidey sense that told me, I don't trust this girl. I don't think she's going to do the right thing. And so I had one of my team members go check on it. My team member got there at the moment the inspection was supposed to start. And there it was, both inspectors, these two guys in the house. Electronic lockbox was wide open and the agent was nowhere to be found. It's a big deal. And, it's just that kind of stuff should not be happening. So we really have to do everybody's job to get it to the finish line, because I never know. I had one, this is a pretty famous story, where the buyer agent did show up with the inspector, but then she also ordered pizza. And I didn't know that until I get a call from the seller, because on their Ring doorbell, they call me in a panic going, what in the heck are they doing? Are they going to squat in the house? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And they're like, why is the pizza delivery at my door on my Ring doorbell? And it wasn't one pizza. It was 4 pizzas and a bag of wings. So I could see why they're wondering if they're going to move in or not. So you have to really watch what these people are doing. I've had them red tag furnaces, a brand new furnace, only because the inspector's gadget was wrong. I've had them say that the well ran dry. They actually ran the tank of the well dry by running the water for 4.5 hours. Now the sellers were home during this, and I get this text from the seller going, how come there's sand in my sink? And I'm like, oh my God. I knew right away they sucked sand up through the well pump because they ran the water too long. Most wells aren't designed to run every single faucet in the house for 4 hours. Water test. Oh, those are exciting. So the unlicensed inspector, I just had this happen again, where they don't know how to properly run a water contamination test on a well. So they contaminate the sample, or they take it on a Friday. So they go down and get these samples from the county. And the county won't take samples on Friday because you have to take the sample properly, make sure you sanitize the site, take the screen out, run the water for a while. He didn't do it properly. And then because they don't take samples on Friday, he let the samples sit in his truck over the weekend or longer. Then when they did run the test, it said, oh, it's positive for chloroform bacteria. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't believe it. We have a professional water testing company. She went and properly ran the test and it turned out clean. So these guys just don't know what they're doing, but this is how they justify their job and give the buyer's agent, quote, negotiation room. So you can prepare by in a lot of ways by doing this. Something I just learned about just the other night at a homeowners meeting is if you're on a lot with trees, I guess it's going into law on December 1st, Richard, that people that have heavily treed lots, if you don't get your house certified for fire mitigation, it will have to be done as part of the sales process. Did you know about this?
No, and I got to tell you what, I keep a close eye. I used to cover fires all the time, probably about 4 years, all of the major fires, Hayman, whatever. And I had no idea about this. I'm pretty sure it's under the radar for the average person, which again is why the average person ought to be talking to you or at least listening to you.
Anyways, it's going to be mandatory here in about a month. So that kind of stuff you need to know about, plan ahead because all these things take time. My name is Barb Schlinker. I'm the real estate broker for Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty. Barb has the buyer's team and the host of this show, Real Estate Voice. We're talking about inspection problems and whether or not a seller should be in his own home during the inspection, or if he can't be there, we can represent you and be there. And when we come back, we're going to talk about some more inspection excitement for home sellers and how you can actually plan ahead to get it right. Richard?
You're listening to Your Real Estate Voice with Barb Schlinker of Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty. She's the host of the program, and we're talking about home inspection problems that home sellers do face. Barb, what are some of the other tips for our listeners that they should know about?
Okay, so the typical things that the buyer is looking for is essentially broken stuff, right? And probably all the systems are working fairly well, but they're looking for things that are not obvious, like the roof. A lot of people have hail damaged roofs. The septic or sewer line. Sometimes they don't know there's any problem, especially sewer lines, because most people tell me, I never checked out the sewer line because it never backed up. I never had any problems. Septic. Having to repair a septic system that has failed takes months and months. So water checks are a good thing to do. Having the furnace cleaned and serviced, but septic and sewer and roof and water, I would definitely get ahead of those and check those out in advance because the septic system alone, I've been through probably 3 or 4 just in the past couple of months where the seller spent literally 90 days from the time they found out to the time they got a bid to the time they got a permit to get it, just to get a bid. That was to the bid point, and then the work is done after that. So one of the things that we offered is we help our home sellers offer what's called a certified pre-owned home, where we actually do a pre-inspection. We get you ready for these things so there aren't any surprises when the buyer comes along and they start asking for stuff. The worst time to find out you have one of these major problems you have to repair is when you're trying to move, because it could delay the closing process, it could delay the sales process, and it could limit your ability to negotiate for some of these more expensive repairs if you don't know in advance. And we actually include a home warranty with our certified pre-owned home program that covers all the systems for the seller during the process. So if you'd like to find out about that and you're thinking of making a move, give us a call at 719-301-3900 or go to barbhasthebuyers.com. Richard?
Here we go. You're listening to Barb Schlinker on Your Real Estate Voice. She is with Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty. And if you're thinking of selling your home, you want to get the most amount of money, then you need to call Barb at 719-301-3900 or simply visit barbhasthebuyers.com. A short break. When we come back, we're going to be talking about what makes a cash offer better on a house for sellers, plus Barb's hot new listings.